I think we had covered up the entire thing, or we had covered up to this point.
Yes, sir.
Yes. So if there are any questions, just again have a look at it. If there are any questions, first I'll clarify those, and then we'll move on to the next section. Yes, please, questions are welcome. If there are any issues, any questions. Now, another question which is not related to this is that do you access this particular meeting through a WhatsApp link, or you enter directly into Teams and then you access this meeting?
Through WhatsApp.
Through WhatsApp.
Yes, sir.
Through WhatsApp.
Can you can somebody drop in messages? Those who entered through WhatsApp. Just send me messages that just write alongside your name WhatsApp.
So should we write in the meeting or in the WhatsApp group?
No. You write in this meeting link. There is a chat option. No. So which one was easier? It was easier through the WhatsApp link, or it's easy if you are accessing first this Office platform 365 and then you access the link. It was easier for you.
WhatsApp is easier.
Sir,
The WhatsApp link is easier. When you enter through, see why I'm asking, because I'm to this platform and because it's university side. So another query that I have is that when you access this platform, some of you may have entered without the WhatsApp link also. People who entered without the WhatsApp link.
Yes, sir.
Yes. So did you see the meeting? Because I switched on the meetings 5 minutes late. Okay. So did you see anything on the I am logged on or not logged on? That was appearing.
Sir, there was already a meeting going on before you started.
There was a meeting was going on.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Someone initiated.
Students had started the previous meeting.
So can I? But according to me,
From July, later on, someone had started the previous meeting again.
Yes, sir. 27th of July.
27th of July. Okay, that earlier meeting was still on.
Yes, sir.
So, but today nobody could start a fresh meeting for today.
No, sir. We logged in through the WhatsApp link you sent to us.
Okay.
So through logging in using the team, there is a confusion that which link is the correct and which link is the wrong. So it is easier for us to log in through the WhatsApp link.
Actually, so I'll continue that. Okay, because I was not sure that whether on this platform, it will allow you to directly access through the link or not, because it's a closed platform. Generally, those who are enrolled here, those who are listed here in that group, only they can access. So there was some confusion that whether that will it will allow you to access or not. But if it is allowing, it's very good for us. So I'll be posting on the WhatsApp group, so it will be easier for all of us. Okay. So any questions regarding this research process? Yes.
The link that you have sent of attendance, it's not accessible. Previously, when you send, no, it's not accessible.
Sir, it's accessible, I think, by entering the details of the Microsoft,
no, sir.
Asking for the sign-in.
I think those of you who are trying to access without signing in through the Microsoft platform, they may be encountering difficulty.
I've already signed up.
No, you have signed up, but right now maybe you are not accessing through that. You may be trying to directly access without logging on to your Microsoft account. Anyways, you send me the message, and whatever problem you're encountering, I'll just again have a look at it. But it should be allowing, because the others have accessed it. And please quickly mark it.
Maybe because I've done this on my phone. I've not attended through laptop.
Okay, maybe that may be the reason you are not. Maybe you are logged on to this particular meeting through the HTML page, not through the login process. That may be the reason.
So I've directly logged in from the Teams app.
Did it ask for your password?
No, sir.
That is the reason. That is the reason. Unless you access through, by giving your password and login into that, AMU online, that particular portal, it will not accept. That's the problem. So it's a policy of this particular platform from the university side that if you log in through there, then only it will be accepting. Okay, if there are questions regarding this research process, let us move on. Any questions regarding this research? Yes.
Sorry, in attendance form, there is a question number 2. Sir, yes. What we have to fill this?
What is the question?
Question number 2, it's like, the question is writing. Sir, question, so there is no particular question. I think
no question, but in the attendance.
Yes, sir, in the attendance.
No, in the attendance, question number 2 is branch oblique class.
No, sir, it's the question.
No, there is some problem because I've already got some 43 responses and they're absolutely okay from the point of view of response. I'm getting responses. I don't know which particular attendance link you have opened.
Sir, in today's link, there was something related to question. If you have any question, and there was a space to enter any question, so we typed.
Okay. Perhaps by mistake. It is somehow entered there. I'll check. Rest of the questions were okay.
Sir, so we entered nothing in that.
Okay, I understand. Okay. I just saw it. There is some problem there. I saw it. Yes, please. There are no questions. So let me move on. I'll move on to the next part.
Yes, but please carry on.
Is it visible? Classification of research designs?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So we will be discussing today research designs, and in this first thing, we'll try to find out what exactly we mean by design and how do we define it in the context of research and in the context of social sciences. So as must be appearing before you on the screens, see, it can have various meanings depending upon who the individual is, depending upon which particular domain you are trying to discuss this particular term. So from our point of view, we will try to understand it that as if we are talking of a pattern or an outline. And of course, it will be in the context of a research project, a pattern or an outline. So when we say research design, or whether the researcher has provided research design or what is the research design for a particular study, what we expect is that the essential elements of the study, they must be provided, they must be explained by the researcher, and it is something similar to the model is being described by the researcher. So then it can also be imagined as if when you approach an architect and the architect provides you the blueprint of a house, and you can construct a house without a blueprint also, but you will agree that there will be a lot of wastage of resources if we do not proceed with a blueprint, if we are proceeding without a blueprint. So in case of research also, if we do not have a proper design, what would happen is that there will be, more of time will be required, there will be cost overruns, there will be other hiccups during the course of the study. So it is always advisable that first you should very clearly lay down that what would be the design that you will be adopting. And let me, again, make you recall that it will be the, description of this study. And we expect that by going through the design, the reader, or for example, our client, or for example, somebody who has commissioned the study, generally it will be a manager or a team in the organization, they are able to understand that how I will be proceeding, how I will be going about doing that particular study. So one inherent characteristic of these research designs is that they are supposed to be flexible. Now, there is a reason behind it. Why? Because when you start with a study, or for example, when you are dealing with a problem, what happens is during the course of the progress of that particular project, at times you realize that some mid-course corrections are required because maybe things are not, or the issue was not what you initially visualized. So there has to be a room for flexibility as far as your design is concerned, so that minor mid-course corrections wherever required, they can be affected. Then the question is that how to select the right research design, because design is okay, and as I said, the design is something similar to the blueprint that the architects provide to us, and here we are providing only the bare essentials of the study. But for selecting the design, some issues are there that we have to keep in mind. First of all, we should be asking ourselves that does the information already exist, or we have to discover it or search it for the first time. Then we have to also ask that some more facts needed, is some more information needed there. Then we have to ask that are we supposed to explore more ideas? Are we supposed to interact with some individuals? Are we supposed to get their feedback? So we have to see that, do I need to continue with this study for a extended period of time, or it will be for a short period of time? So I have to ask and I have to be clear about these issues. Then only I will be in a position to properly decide that which particular design I'll be adopting. So why do we need these designs? A question that may come to your mind, because it will provide us clarity. It will help us in sticking to procedures which help us generate data which is relevant from the point of view of the problem. So if you are not having a design, what happens is that you are not clear how to proceed most of the time, and your client also will not be clear regarding what exactly you intend to do as far as the issues are concerned. So it will help the researcher, you as a researcher, in deciding what exactly is needed, and it will be ensuring that you are able to complete the study in minimum possible time, and you will not be encountering any kind of major issues there. Then you see, when we talk of research designs, one more thing that we have to remember is that if those researchers who have been able to crystallize designs, they will be able to carry out the analysis and also interpret it in appropriate manner. By appropriate manner, I mean that because optimal procedures may have been employed by them, and because it is assumed that they have a design available to them, and they have been able to crystallize the design, they have been able to share the design. And remember that what happens is that when you are crystallizing the design, this means that you are very clear about the problem itself, because unless you are clear about the problem, you can proceed in the desired direction, and you will not be able to understand what exactly are the problems which are being faced, and because of which this study has been commissioned. Because I am proceeding with the assumption that whatever research we are doing, that research is being carried out so as to solve a problem. It is an applied research. Another advantage of having a design with us is that it helps us in sticking to procedures which are economical. So in short, we will be wasting or a minimum of resources if we are proceeding with appropriate design. Then we classify design broadly into two types, that is exploratory designs and conclusive designs. And then we will see that that further branching is possible, but broad classification that we have is exploratory and conclusive. So as far as exploratory designs are concerned, you can imagine that they are the simplest. They help us in designing, simplest in the sense that here we do not have any kind of structured questionnaire with us. Here we are still grappling with the problem itself. We are trying to understand the problem. We are trying to define the problem. And once we are clear about the problem, then we will be in a position to understand that what are the variables of interest from our point of view. That is from the point of view of research. And once we are clear about the variables of interest, then we will be in a position to better understand that how these variables interact with each other, how they're playing with each other. So this particular research or research at this stage, that is at the stage of exploratory research, what happens is that we are able to gain deeper insights, or some researchers say additional insights, into the issue that we are trying to address. So another advantage of this exploratory designs, or when we are resorting to these, is that once we are clear about the variables of interest, once we are clear about the problem itself, that is, we have been able to define the problem, then it is expected that we may be in a position to better crystallize hypothesis. Now, what is hypothesis? Hypothesis is a conjectural statement. It's an imaginary, it's a statement where you imagine, where you conjecture that this is the nature of relationship between the variables of interest. As simple as that. But we'll be discussing something more about hypothesis later. Now, there is somebody, just a moment, there's somebody trying to enter. Okay, I'll allow him. So hypothesis, remember, is a conjectural statement about relationships between the variables of interest from the point of view of that particular research. And in fact, exploratory research is said to be one of, as I was saying, it's the quickest and the cheapest way to discover these hypotheses. And once you have been able to crystallize the hypothesis, this means that your task is over, that you have been able to accomplish what you wanted during this stage. So then you can move on to the next stage, that is the stage of conclusive research. But we have to remember that when we are saying that we are trying to define the problem, we are trying to understand the problem with the help of exploratory research, this means that these designs, exploratory research designs, they are inherently flexible. They are unstructured. Because when we are trying to understand the problem and we are not clear about it, this means that we cannot proceed in a structured fashion. As we explore, we realize that we really did not understand initially what the problem is. And we go deeper and more issues keep popping up before us, and we keep probing those issues. And that is why it is said that it is flexible and it is unstructured. In fact, you will find that this particular design, generally relies on samples which are small, samples which are non-representative. Now, what do you mean by small? Remember that in exploratory designs, nowhere you will find that the sample size will be more than 100. In fact, in most of the studies, the sample size is less than 50. That is, we rely on small samples. And when we say non-representative, it basically means that this particular sample on which we are relying, this has not been decided by us. Now, what is okay? What basically it means is that it has not been decided by us using some kind of scientific procedure. By scientific procedure, I mean that probability sampling approach has not been adopted. That is, your sample is a non-probability sampling based, non-probability sample. So by this, again, what I mean is that non-representative samples, basically, they are, decided by the researcher based on the whims and fancies of the researcher, based upon the likes and dislikes of the researcher. And that is why it is said that they are most of the time non-representative. Here, what happens is at times the researcher interacts with individuals whom he or she thinks are more knowledgeable regarding that area. Because just remember that we are trying to understand the problem during this stage. So when we are trying to understand, then you have to use your judgment. You have to identify those individuals whom you think are knowledgeable and whom you think that can be of help to you in understanding whatever problem you are trying to address. So it can be, for example, in the context of HR, it can be HR managers, it can be consultants, it can be academicians, for example, with whom you will be interacting, and you will be trying to get their view on those things. And you expect that their views and their inputs will help you in understanding your own problem, so that you are able to move on to the next stage of research, that is the stage of conclusive research. What the researchers do is that they will be selecting some cases. Now, by this, what we mean is that you may be deciding that, suppose a particular organization is of interest to you, and you feel that if you probe deeper and if you study that organization in depth regarding why it was successful, why it was a failure, or why its various strategies have been successful and they have been moving in the desired direction, they have been, for example, lots of profits. So, though of course profit may not be the sole motive as far as your interest in that organization is concerned, but suppose it fits your criteria, it fits your bill, and you decide that, okay, first let me study this organization in detail, or let me study this particular individual in detail, and once I am through, then it will be of help to me in understanding my problem itself. So you can do that particular thing also, or you can follow this particular approach also. So what happens is that generally will be examining, in case of exploratory designs, all the records in great detail, and you will be observing things minutely. And the idea is that with this minute observation, by interacting with people in an unstructured manner, by probing them in depth, you will be able to crystallize the issues, you will be able to identify the variables, then you will be able to identify the hypothesis, and the hypothesis will be tested subsequently during the next stage of research, that is during the conclusive research stage. One interesting characteristic of exploratory designs is that whatever we are generating from the respondents, or for example, that whatever phenomena of interest is there, what we end up with is our responses in the form of words, in the form of phrases, in the form of maybe paragraphs. And that is why it is said that whatever data we generate, and of course, when we are generating it, we will refer to that as primary data, because whatever data is generated by the researcher is referred to as primary data. And whatever data on which the researcher is relying that already exists is referred to as secondary data. So this primary data that you are generating during this exploratory research stage, this is said to be qualitative. Why? Because it is in the form of words, it is in the form of phrases, it is in the form of maybe paragraphs, and it may also be in the form of maybe a short story. So whatever data is emerging during the course of exploratory research, that is said to be qualitative in nature. And here what is happening is that sometimes, before you start with your research, you have to resort to the exploratory design, because maybe some aspects of your problem are not clear. Sometimes what happens is that the end result of your research may require further research. So during that stage also, you may be requiring exploratory research to better understand some of the aspects of your findings. That whatever is the outcome of your exploratory research, this outcome is not conclusive. It is tentative in nature. By tentative, we mean that we are not very sure of the findings. Why? Because remember that the sample on which we are relying is small. The sample on which we are relying is non-representative. So it can give us some insights. It can give us some broad ideas. But whatever is your outcome, whatever is the finding, those findings should not be generalized to the wider or larger population. Why? Because your findings pertain to that small group, and that small group, we should be very clear, is non-representative. It is not representative of the population at large, because we did not decide on that sample using any kind of scientific sampling procedure. It is not a probability-based sample. So, but why still we do this kind of research? Because it provides us insights. It helps us in defining the problem. It helps us, for example, in crystallizing the hypothesis. And once we have these with us, then we are in a position to move to the next stage of research, that is conclusive research. Now, next stage is conclusive research. And before I start discussing this, I would like to have questions related to the exploratory research design that I have just now covered. Yes, please. Just unmute yourself. I hope you have the facility of unmuting yourself. Hello? Hello?
Yes, sir, we can unmute ourselves.
Yeah, you can unmute. Because why I'm asking, because the universities may have changed some policies, in between the time that we met last time. So maybe that's why I'm clarifying from you that whether you have this facility still or not. So what I'll suggest is that any questions, any queries regarding exploratory designs you have, you please clarify them, and then we'll move on to conclusive designs. Yes, please. I'll give you one or 2 minutes. Just think about it. If you have any queries, you're welcome.
sir, is there any criteria for a sample size in
Yes, that's what you're saying.
I'm
Yes,
asking, is there any criteria for how to decide what should the sample size in exploratory research, since it's not non-representative?
See, Vikas, a very pertinent question. As I told you, it depends upon the whims and fancies of the researcher. Fine.
Okay.
Okay. So the moment we say non-representative, it means here, as I told you, that scientific procedures have not been followed in deciding on that sample. And when you are at this stage of research, that is exploratory research, remember that here problem itself, you are not trying to find a final solution to the problem. You are trying to understand the problem, and in that you have to use your judgment as a researcher, that how many people you will be including in your survey, and how many of them will be experts, whom you think are experts. Because remember, again, it's a subjective term. Somebody whom I may be considering as an expert, you may not consider as an expert. So it's a subjective term. So it depends upon the researcher, but generally it is advised that the researcher should see to it that even that non-representative sample is reflective of reality. Have you got my point? The non-representative sample is reflective of reality. Suppose, for example, you ultimately will be administering your questionnaire, or you have to generate responses from males and females, both. But suppose in your small sample, or the non-representative sample that you are considering during the exploratory stage, you interact only with females or only with males. So in that case, what would happen is that you are not interacting with a particular group from whom some interesting inputs may be provided to you. So that you have to keep in mind.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yes. Any other? Okay. So let us discuss this next type of designs, that is conclusive research. Now, what do you mean by conclusive research? First of all, remember that we have already been through the exploratory research design stage. So we have been able to crystallize the problem. We have been able to identify what are the variables of interest. We have been able to, before moving on to this stage, able to crystallize the hypothesis also. And what is the hypothesis? Let me repeat. It's a conjectural statement. It is a conjectural statement in the sense that we are assuming that this is the nature of relationship that exists between the variables of interest. So it's not necessary that you will be having only one hypothesis. You may be having several hypotheses with you. Now, it depends upon the researcher. It depends upon the problem that you are trying to address. It depends upon the number of variables that you have to play around as far as your research is concerned, that how many hypotheses you would be having. But generally, it is advised that you should be having too many hypotheses, because it becomes too cumbersome for you to handle, and it becomes also difficult from the point of view of your target audience understanding what exactly you are trying to convey to them. So limited number of hypotheses should be there. For example, you can have 5 hypotheses, 6 hypotheses, but generally do not cross the 10 mark. That is, don't have more than 10 hypotheses even in a research paper, or I advise even in case of doctoral work, more than 10 hypotheses should be avoided. So in case of studies that we do for our clients, for example, applied studies that we do, or for example, applied research that we're doing, the more important part is that are we able to address the issues from the side of the client, rather than how many hypotheses we are able to generate. So that is more important. So then for that, what we can do is that once we have been able to crystallize the hypothesis during the exploratory stage, we should be discussing with the people in the management of the organization which has commissioned the study. Will these hypotheses or will these variables be of help to you in trying to address what you are facing right now? And once you get a green signal from them, and once they also concur, then you can proceed forward. Now, coming back to conclusive research designs, we need to keep in mind that the information is needed is defined. That is, what exactly is the type of data that we need to generate, because we are clear about the problem. Once the problem is clear, variables are clear. And of course, whenever we are trying to come up with a questionnaire or some kind of research instrument, if you are clear about the variables, what is of interest to you, then it is always helpful to you in coming up with a questionnaire which is short and sweet. Because if you're not clear about the problem, then you will be trying to include so many questions which may be unnecessary. So stick to pertinent questions, stick to questions which are absolutely required for the purpose of your study, so that your questionnaire remains a short questionnaire, and so that your respondents do not encounter any difficulty, and they don't have to suffer from respondent fatigue. They don't have to suffer from boredom when you are administering your questionnaire. So here in this case, we say that the research process is formal, whereas in case of exploratory research designs, remember that the research process is not formal. Here it is structured. In the previous case, it was unstructured. Now, why we are saying structured? Because we are clear about the problem. We know how to proceed forward. And in this case, the samples on which we rely, they are representative and they are generally large. Now, by large, they can be in thousands, but generally when we say large in the context of social sciences, the number it means is more than 100. So generally, in case of doctoral studies that we do, you will find that the sample size may be around 400, 500, 1,000, 1,500. And in some large studies which are being done by, and studies which are commissioned studies or studies where some, which has been sponsored, which have been sponsored by some organization, you will find that at times the respondents may be to the tune of 5,000, 10,000, even 1 lakh. It depends upon whether you have the sponsorship, whether you have the resources for that. But the academic studies we do, generally you will find that the sample size does not cross 1,000. So data that we obtain during this stage, that is the stage of conclusive research, it can be subjected to higher order analysis, higher order quantitative analysis. Whereas in the previous stage, that is we are doing during the exploratory stage, whatever is the outcome, and remember that outcome is in the form of qualitative data. Suppose the data generating is qualitative data. The outcome, remember that we are coming up with, that is the findings are tentative. We are not sure of the findings. So the data that we are generating during this stage is said to be quantitative in nature. Let me repeat, quantitative in nature. And since it is quantitative in nature, we can subject that data to quantitative analysis. Whereas the data in the case of exploratory research designs, what we are generating, that data is qualitative in nature, and that is why it can be subjected to qualitative analysis. It's not that software tools are not available for analyzing qualitative data. They are available, but the options available to us, they are few as far as qualitative data analysis is concerned. As far as quantitative is concerned, there are so many options. There are different types of softwares, different types of analytical tools and procedures that we can adopt so as to analyze the data which is quantitative in nature. Then you see, researchers, as we were discussing initially, that exploratory stage hypothesis has been crystallized. Now, during this stage, we will be testing those hypotheses empirically. Now, like for example, your hypothesis could be that larger the company, the more formalized the HRM practices are likely to be. So this, to common sense, it appears that my hypothesis is okay. That if a company is large, it will be having more formalized HRM practices. If a company is small, then formalized HRM practices won't be existing. For example, if a small shop and suppose 2 employees are there, and suppose it's a company. So we do not expect that any formalized HRM practices would be there. But if there is a large organization, like for example, you have Infosys, or for example, any other ABC organization which is large, where thousands of employees are there, then it is expected that more formalized HRM practices would be there in that organization. So this is my hypothesis, suppose. So, and of course, this hypothesis would be testing after generating data, depending upon the variables of interest, and then we will try to show empirically whether my hypothesis is being accepted or it cannot be rejected. So depending on whatever is the outcome, I'll present my findings to the larger audience or to the academic community or to my clients that okay, this is what is the picture that has emerged. Now in this case, whatever findings we arrive at, they are conclusive. That is, I'm pretty sure of the findings. I can use them for the purpose of decision making. That is as simple as that. Whereas in the case of exploratory designs, whatever findings you come up with, it is not advisable. I'll say not advisable for you to use those findings for the purpose of decision making. And decision making, of course, we are discussing from the point of view of managerial decision making. So, in case of exploratory research, remember the findings are tentative. So, ideally, they should not be used as inputs for the purpose of decision making. But as far as whatever findings you arrive at, these findings can be used for the purpose of decision making because we are pretty sure of them, and these findings are not tentative, but rather they are conclusive. Somebody said, please just let me just check what's the issue. Okay, no problem. Heather, are you there right now in the group? Heather? So with this understanding, we'll move to the next part here. We will discuss some further classification of these conclusive designs. We will be discussing descriptive designs and causal research designs. And let us see what these descriptive and causal are. See, descriptive, the moment we say, as the term itself indicates, describe. So here what we are doing is we try to portray the characteristics of some management phenomena or something of interest, and we also try to determine the frequency of occurrence of that particular phenomena. And here what we are doing is that here we are trying to describe the characteristics of whichever group that is of interest to us. It can be an organization, it can be anything of interest to us. So as a researcher, what we do is that we describe. And during this stage, what we do is that we try to estimate the percentage of units, for example, in a specified population. What we do is that we try to determine the degree to which different variables are associated with us, and from where we have come up with these variables. Please remember, we have been able to identify, or we were able to identify these variables of interest during the exploratory stage. Because once we are through with that stage, only then we move on to the conclusive stage, and descriptive it comes under conclusive. So once we have been able to identify that, then we move on to this stage, and we try to during this stage we try to determine that what is the nature of association between the various variables of interest, and we can make predictions. During this, we can make predictions regarding the occurrence of a particular phenomena with the understanding that we get here. Now there are two possibilities here as far as these designs are concerned. That is especially descriptive designs. Further classification that we have is cross-sectional designs and longitudinal designs. But broadly remember one thing, that whether we are talking of these descriptive designs, or next we will discuss longitudinal designs, or so here what happens is that each time we proceed, we are supposed to proceed, we will be drawing, especially in case of descriptive designs, we will be drawing a fresh sample. Like for example, in case of cross-sectional designs, what happens is that we are interested in carrying out a cross-sectional study, say cross-sectional study. So this study will give us a snapshot view of things. It will give us a view of things as they existed at a particular point in time. Like for example, if I administer a questionnaire on this group right now, so whatever will be emerging from the group will be in the context of the responses that you gave to me today, that is 31st of July, and it will be say at 12:50 p.m. or 12 when you have given me the responses. Of course, you may require 4 or 5 minutes to give me a response based upon how lengthy my questionnaire is. But I said that I generally try to keep questionnaires short and sweet. So I administered the questionnaire, you give me some feedback, and the feedback is in the context of a particular point in time. So it will be giving me a snapshot view of things. That is a cross-sectional view of things. Now, whereas if I'm going for a longitudinal design, so here in case of longitudinal designs, see what it is not this. Just a moment. There is some problem here. There is some problem here. Just a moment. Sorry, there is some typo here. It's not longitudinal. It will be multiple cross-sectional designs. See, suppose there are two possibilities. Fine. Okay. So I'll come down to that later. See, as far as descriptive designs are concerned, we need to remember that if you're going in for a cross-sectional design, here what will happen is that it will give us a snapshot view of things. Let us take a simple example. See, you have your mobile phones with you. You can take, you can take images, or for example, you can operate your mobile phone in two different modes. As far as taking images concerned, either it can be in video mode, or you can activate the camera in still mode. So if you are trying to take the images, for example, in still mode, then it will give you how things existed at that point in time when that still image was taken. But suppose you activate the video mode of the camera. Now, why I'm saying both are images, because what is a video? Video is nothing but a stitching together of a large number of still images. So that's why in case of video mode, what happens is that it helps us in tracking how things change with the passage of time. Fine, how things change with the passage of time. So this is the advantage that we have when we are going in for a design that helps us in keeping track of things as they change with time. So if we are interested in studying that how things change with the passage of time, in that case, we will go for a longitudinal design. If we are interested in finding out how things change, how things existed at a particular point in time, So then we will be going in for a cross-sectional design. Now, in case of cross-sectional design, two possibilities exist. We can either go for single cross-sectional design or we can go in for multiple cross-sectional design. So if you are going in for single cross-sectional design, it means that you will be drawing sample only once. If you are going in for multiple cross-sectional designs, it means that you will be drawing multiple samples. Whereas in case of longitudinal designs, what happens is that you draw sample only once and the sample remains fixed. Now with this, I'm stopping here. And if you have any questions, please ask me. So we will discuss in this, the next section in the on Monday. And I hope, you see, on Monday, what we will be doing is that I've discussed with your other teacher that we will be having a longer session. And I think it will be a session that will start at 12:55, 11. In fact, 11:15 you have a class. Am I right? 11:15 to 12:55. So we'll be having 2 periods on Monday, and on Tuesday I'll not be having a period. The period that I'll be engaging on Monday of the other teacher, that they will be taking a combined class on Tuesday. So they will be having a on Tuesday. So on Monday we'll be meeting and we'll be having a longer session on Monday. So if you have any questions up to this point, you are welcome. And please do not leave. Let me just check out if there are any issues as far as your attendance is concerned, and I will address them. If there are any questions, you are most welcome. You can ask me. Whatever has been discussed up to this point, you are welcome to ask. Yes, please.
Sir, what is qualitative and quantitative data?
Okay, very nice. Anybody else has any other queries? I'll answer that, no problem. Yes, anybody has any other questions? He has asked about quantitative and qualitative. I'll answer that. Yes, please. Any other question? Fine. You have no other questions, then let me answer this. See, I said that in case of exploratory designs or exploratory studies, what happens is that we generate data which is in the form of words, which is in the form of phrases, or maybe in the form of sentences or paragraphs or even short stories. So it is not in the form of numbers. It is difficult for us to convert that response into a number. Whereas in case of quantitative data, what's happening, or quantitative data that we are generating during the conclusive research stage, there what is happening is that suppose I have a question like, do you own a two-wheeler? Now a person may say yes, a person may say no. There are only two possibilities. It cannot be that maybe. So I can very easily code yes into a 1 and no into a 2. Are you getting me? And then what I can do, I can easily find out how many yeses I got and how many no's I got. So it will give me a frequency count, or I can make out that out of my respondents or my sample, how many people owned a two-wheeler, how many people did not own a two-wheeler. Now this kind of clear-cut situation is not possible as far as qualitative data is concerned, because there the responses are more in the form of opinions, in the form of expression, where people use their own expressions to share with me what do they have in them regarding the phenomena of interest from the point of view of researcher. So that is why we say it is difficult to quantify or difficult to convert the response into a number as far as qualitative data is concerned. Whereas in case of quantitative data, we can easily convert the response, just I shared with you, yes and no, into 1 or 2, and then we can easily analyze that how many yes were there, how many twos were there, which is not possible in case of qualitative data.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Okay. So still, if others have any questions and they have not yet been able to ask because the other teacher may be waiting. So let us break right now and we'll be meeting on Monday. So you are welcome to ask any queries, and I will continue with this discussion only once I'm able to clear your doubts regarding what we have discussed up to this point. So thank you very much. Bye-bye. Let's break.
Thank you, sir.